Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I'm joined by the amazing Joey Marsh. Joey, how you doing today, man?
Doing pretty good, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well. Thank you again for agreeing to do this. I'm very excited to work with you again. But before we talk about why you're here, I would like for the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit. You got started on YouTube about 11 years ago. Well, about 11 years ago, you started watching some of your favorites. Sean Chandler talks about 3C Films, Cody Leach, and after admiring them for a while, you decided to start your own channel. And when you did, you kind of focused on everything, trying to do
Yeah.
everything you possibly could. And it didn't really work out the way that you were hoping. So you narrowed that down a little bit and you started doing the Marvel and DC Marshlands, really covering Marvel and DC content more than everything. So what made you decide to pick that avenue to go and follow and do mostly Marvel and DC content?
So for me personally, as you just pointed out a minute ago, I did make a mistake of I tried to just do everything. The majority of it isn't even on the channel anymore. I've just deleted it to kind of get rid of the clutter. But yeah, I
Yeah.
was doing stuff like food reviews, card unboxings, mystery bags, movie reviews, TV show, you name it, pretty much anything that was basically like a fad at the time was that's what I was doing, just trying to basically cheat the YouTube system and just like do everything at once. And I brought in multiple different people, and there are certain people on my channel that got brought in that I'm glad are around now that have stuck through with the Marvel and DC Marshland stuff. But
Hmm.
yeah, eventually at some point I decided like, yeah, this isn't working, and I'm like, I need to focus on something that is a passion of mine, and I've always been very passionate about Marvel and DC comics.
Hmm.
And so the Marvel and DC Marshlands name actually was in regards to people like Cody Leach and Sean Chandler talks about. Initially, I was going to do like that and just do something simple, like Joey Marsh, Joseph Marsh. You go on YouTube right now and you type in Joey Marsh or Joseph Marsh, you're going to get about 15 different. Leave it to me to have the first and last name that are the most common names. So not just first, but first and last. And yeah, so I had to go with something creative, and I got thinking about it, and somebody on Discord recommended the Marshlands part, and I'm like, actually, that works out pretty good. But yeah, I got started with Marvel and DC because of my dad.
Okay.
Um, when I was real young, like he actually grew up with a bunch of like the old Adam West, Batman, Lou Ferrigno Hulk, Linda Carter, Wonder Woman, like the old kind of stuff like that. And I don't know if you remember or not, but back in like the like about like mid '90s, early 2000s, I think it was a Sci-Fi Channel. They did a marathon thing they used to do called like I think it was Superhero World, where they would like do like marathons of those. And
Hmm.
we used to have. I grew up in the VHS era,
Sure, me too.
and yeah, and we'll actually be talking about it a little bit when we get to the movie that we're going to be discussing here in a minute. But we used to go ahead and we would do the little. I don't know if you guys did this growing up. We did the old cable hack. We would go and we would buy the blank VHS tapes from like the dollar store and just go ahead and we would alternate. We would schedule ahead and pick something that we knew we wanted, and then sometimes we would just go ahead and we would just pop it in about 10 o'clock at night, hit record, and then whenever we woke up to the next day, that was the 8 hours that we were like, hey, that was our stuff. And then we would cancel the cable subscription because
Yep.
we had, 8 hours worth of content on the VHS because they had like, I think it was like the 7 day trial. And yeah, a lot of times it was like the old, like Adam West Batman was the most prominent. That was the one they liked showing the most. But yeah, I just got very invested in those. And I don't know about like the early to mid 2000s. I started watching a little bit of like like the X-Men movies, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, a bunch of that kind of stuff. My dad actually passed away when I was 13. I was born in '91, so he passed away in about like 2003, 2004.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
But yeah, and so yeah, like For a while, it was largely Marvel content that I stuck to. Then there was for a good while that I started. That was my avenue of searching and kind of looking into. But DC, I started getting more into Batman more than anything,
Hmm.
and so Batman was a pretty big avenue for me for a while. Um, I didn't get into Superman until Man of Steel. Like Man of
Okay.
Steel was the first time that I got into Superman. Like before that, I watched like a few minutes of Superman Returns at a neighbor's house. I fell asleep. Like I legit like fell asleep and just woke up and they're doing the island scene at the end, and I'm like, wait, what? Like what's this going on? But
I've never been a huge Superman fan either, man, except for the death of Superman.
yeah, for me, it's just always been one of those things of like I've grown to appreciate the character more over the years, and he does have some really cool, like story arc and some of the animated movies that they do, especially the ones that's him and Batman, can be pretty fun. But yeah, overall for me, he's just been one of those characters of I have a hard time investing myself in a character who basically just has like every superpower imaginable and just like nothing can defeat him, and
That's
it
boring.
just exactly. And so yeah, for a while it took me a minute to get into him. The new Superman though, I will say was actually pretty enjoyable. The
Okay.
one that came out earlier this year, back in July, that was actually a pretty solid watch. I had a good time with that. Finally got around to watching the Christopher Reeves movies recently, and those are some of the ones that like it's tricky because like they are definitely some of those influential movies of like like they are very important to like the film genre as a whole because of the
Yeah.
importance of like being what they were. But for the most part, I think that I appreciate and respect them more than I personally enjoy them.
And that makes sense. I've seen a lot of people say that too, which is that's just fine. You know what I mean? It's okay
Yeah,
to respect something and honor what it did and its legacy without enjoying watching it. That's totally commendable.
yeah.
So, and you've been doing this for a while now, man. And for those of you that haven't already, I do have all of Joey's links down in the description. So make sure you're following on social media. Make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel as well. Now, in order to do this type of stuff on YouTube, not really horror, but you do a little bit of horror. Me and you have talked horror a little bit with Slither and stuff
Yeah.
like that, but horror had to start for you somewhere, Joey. So now I would like to go back to the past and talk about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie, and Joey, your first horror movie was.
Pumpkinhead.
What a great start to your horror life, man. I love this movie. I think it's an extremely underrated movie, a movie that is begging for a remake. So,
Oh, absolutely. Like,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, absolutely. It's one of those ones that I would, because of the history that I have with it, I would be kind of holding it at arm's length to an extent, just because of the fact of I fall into that same category of kind of how Cody Leach has kind of like mentioned on his channel before a few times. Of I definitely prefer when they do practical effects, especially when it comes to like the monsters like Pumpkinhead. Just adds a
Yeah.
little bit more of a flavor to it. So like I would be open to the idea of seeing them doing a Pumpkinhead remake, but it would also be something that I'd be a little bit like, okay, like maybe.
You have to keep it practical. I agree with you
Exactly.
100%.
Like
This is not a movie you can do a bunch of CGI with. It will ruin the feeling of Pumpkinhead himself because the creature just looks phenomenal. So, do you
yeah,
remember
and I
about how old you were when you watched it for the first time, Joey?
so it started for me whenever I was about 9 years old. I started noticing of I kind of had that kind of childhood growing up to where the stuff that you had available to watch was essentially like the VHS tapes, like on mom and dad's shelf. And so,
Sure.
I had like a bunch of, like standard kid stuff, like the old VHSs of like, like the Disney movies, some of the Scooby Doo movies, stuff like that. But then they also had
Yeah.
their own things, that they like to watch. And a lot of times it was, like just like if I wanted to watch one of their movies, it was like, okay, what does the cover look like? What does the cover look like? And what does that back paragraph look like? And one day I was just skimming through and I saw the orange Pumpkinhead font on the side. And the font by itself just kind of caught me like, okay, that's kind of cool. And I remember pulling the VHS off the shelf and just looking at the front cover and seeing that creature design on the front cover. And even at 9 years old, just being like, okay, this creature is like, I don't know what this thing is. That looks cool as hell. Like,
Yeah.
I want to see what this is. Like, ask my parents, my mom seeing 9-year-old Joey asking, to watch something like Pumpkinhead. Her and my dad already seen it multiple times. Her immediate response is like, oh, hell no. Like, she's like, because like she knew, because it's not like the most graphic, film of that era by any means, but it's still got some pretty intense
it's
and
it's
it
still
gets
heavy,
messy.
man.
It gets messy a couple times,
Yeah. Oh yeah. It
but
definitely does.
and so yeah, essentially what happened is I just off and on kept on asking about going to go see it, and yeah, I just kept on asking about seeing it, and essentially what happened is I asked my dad one day while my mom was at work, and I was about 10 years old, and he was like, "Okay, sure, we'll go ahead and watch it."
See,
And so
and at least they were able to, come to an agreement and educate and stuff like that. I
yeah,
think that that's, that's how it's supposed to be. And like I said, this is a very influential movie, and still to this day, it's very effective. Do you remember
oh,
what scene it
absolutely.
was that affected you the most?
So there was a scene that was about probably halfway through the movie, I believe. There's Pumpkinhead has already been hunting these kids down and killing and started his killing spree. And there was one scene in particular to where this girl ends up getting taken by Pumpkinhead, and you think that right there is going to be it with this girl, that she's going to get killed off screen. And it's like, okay, cool, that's kind of creepy and it's kind of unnerving seeing that. But then you get to a scene later on to where it's like two or three people that are in this little cottage that they're at, and all of a sudden she starts getting slammed up against the window, and it ends with her just being tossed and landing near this kitchen sink, and blood just starts pouring into the sink. And I just remember that image just like being like, that was the first like slasher kill that I remember being like, shit, that right there was gnarly as hell.
See, and that's one of those ones where it sticks with you. When you see that first
Yeah.
kill, it sticks with you so hard because we're not used to seeing things like that on screen. So when you
Oh,
finally
absolutely.
get to see that, it really blows your mind a little bit.
Oh, for sure. Like it was definitely something that was like, it was creepy as all hell. Like,
And again, it still holds up today.
oh,
It's one of
absolutely, for
those
sure.
kills that I think is absolutely still holds up to this day, doesn't fade at all every time you watch it. So we know which scene affected you the most, but do you have a favorite scene from Pumpkinhead?
So this might be kind of surprising considering what actually was the scene that I just mentioned as being as gory as it was. Um, the scene that actually is a favorite of mine that just really helps set the tone really early in the movie is there's a scene very early on, like probably like first like 15, 20 minutes, where it's you've got Lance Henderson and you've got a little boy, and it's just something very simple of just showing kind of like our day-to-day life. And it's just him taking his little boy, and they've gotten back inside from like doing yard work or something, and he's just helping the little boy wash his hands. And it's just a
Hmm.
cute little father son moment of just showing that like that's another thing too that makes this movie stand out is that like the kid is not on screen for very long at all before the tragedy that
Yeah.
happens, but they do make it very clear, like very early on and in a very quick manner, that just how close of a relationship as far as son duo has. And so when he does actually end up, like when he does get killed, then like you absolutely understand the point of view of the father of why the father is as heartbroken and devastated as what he is and going to the lengths that he is.
Why? I'm trying to tiptoe around this one because it, okay, the film's old enough. We're spoiling it. The son is
Yeah,
killed in an accident. Um,
yeah,
And so, what father at this point isn't going to go all out for his kid? You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
who wouldn't lose their fucking mind at this point? You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, like, and I think especially because me and my dad had such a strong connection, like, I think it hit a little bit harder too because me and my mom, we were close to an extent, but me and my dad were the ones that were definitely much closer and had like more of the connection. So,
Yeah. And I'm looking it up just so I know I'm 100% accurate here. Pumpkinhead all around had the first film, the two made for TV films, and the direct to video film. So you had four films in the Pumpkinhead franchise. I did not know that. I had only known of Pumpkinhead and Pumpkinhead Blood Feud. I didn't know about Ashes to Ashes or Blood Wings. So there are
yeah.
four films in this franchise. So have you seen all the films in this franchise? And if so, which one was your favorite?
So I actually haven't gotten around to watching the other three movies. Kind of in relation to what we were talking about earlier with the idea of them remaking it. There's been a little bit of a slight trepidation of like I'm kind of 50-50 on like how much do I want to try and explore these other movies and see what they did with the character with Pumpkinhead and how I did. And at the same time, I'm also like, I know how some of the horror movies, especially the 90s and 2000s, got of like, okay, I don't really know if I want to watch something that's gonna like tank that original movie. Like, so
And I think that the good thing about that though is like, let's say they did a Pumpkinhead remake and it was garbage. Let's just say that.
yeah.
They still can't come and take the original off of our shelves.
Oh, absolutely, for sure.
You know what I mean? I'm actually
Yeah.
kind of looking into this now. I'm looking into how I can actually buy a couple of these other ones because I really want to kind of check it out. Um, yeah, I'm sitting here looking at this and I'm like, I didn't know these existed. Like it kind of blows my mind because
Oh, I
I
didn't know for a
didn't.
few years until like a few years ago. I mean,
Yeah, because now I'm seeing that they have Pumpkinhead, obviously, and then direct to video was Pumpkinhead 2, Blood Wings, which is the other one I knew. And then they had two television films, Pumpkinhead Ashes to Ashes in 2006 and Pumpkinhead Blood Feud in 2007. I did not know those two movies existed.
yeah.
That's crazy. So I'm gonna have to check these out because I've seen one and two, but I've never heard of the other ones. And I'm sitting here looking at them like, how is this possible that I didn't know about these? That's insane. That's cool, man. That's really cool. So
Yeah.
that's something for, me to look into. Um, so obviously with Pumpkinhead, we talked a little bit about a remake and how we would both kind of like to see a remake. You'd be a little more trepidatious about it than what I would be. If you could be the casting director for this film, who would you cast as the lead in Pumpkinhead?
Oh, that'd be kind of tricky. Of trying to think of somebody who would, because essentially, like as far as the lead goes, the main ones you would need to worry about is going to be, of course, Lance Henderson. You're going to need to worry about his character, and to an extent, the other like kids that are like the victims. You got to need to be
Yeah.
concerned about them to an extent because you don't want them to be bland and boring. Of actually a really good question of who would be a good like father figure that would be
And you could choose anybody. You're the casting
yeah,
director. Whoever you choose gets the role. This isn't a question of if they're available,
yeah,
nothing like that. You choose, they get it, it's over.
yeah. Right off the top of my head, just because I've seen some of the stuff that he's done in the past and seeing the way that he can get emotional, I would be kind of curious too if maybe Bradley Cooper could do.
Okay.
I'm kind of thinking that like that yeah, he'd be able to have enough of being able to have kind of like the emotional, kind of like weight to it, while also having enough of because also at the beginning of the movie you would need to have someone who could have a believable kind of fun relationship with the kid
Mm-hmm.
to have that father son dynamic, and I think he could find that balance pretty well
Yeah. Well, because like you
But
said, you need to have someone that has that balance so that way you feel for him and you want him to win
exactly, like
after what happens. So I completely agree with you. You got to have somebody that can play both sides of that coin very well. They got to be able to
yeah,
play the aggressive, angry father, but they also have to be the
hmm
kind, soft, loving father at the same time.
yeah.
So yeah, that's a great call with Bradley Cooper because I'm a Bradley Cooper fan. Um, Now, I've had an amazing time talking about Pumpkinhead, Joey, and what that means to you. But here for a second, my little buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Joey? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
So favorite scary movie, that one is definitely one of those ones that is that's another tricky one. Favorite scary movie because there's definitely a couple. Um, Off the top of my head, the ones that there's two that mainly come to mind, and it would be the original Scooby Doo on Zombie Island and Smile 2 are two that first come to mind.
Okay. Well, I mean,
Um,
hey, and it's funny
yeah,
because those are complete opposite ends of the spectrum.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
For me, I just feel like for Zombie Island, that's one of the ones that it just stands out to me as being like everybody keeps on asking, what is like a good entryway to horror, especially for like young kids. I feel like something like that would be absolutely perfect because it has enough of the tone of like the original Scooby Doo source material and stuff, but at the same time, it does have like the whole zombie aspect. It's got werewolf creatures. It's got a very creepy atmosphere. Um, the song that's halfway through the movie, "Terror Time Again," like absolutely love that song. Amazing song. But Smile too, like when me and my wife saw it in theaters, that was one of those ones of just like I remember leaving the theater just thinking, just like the first thing I thought was like, finally a horror movie that actually has balls for once. It's not afraid to actually, that's not afraid to go there and just be messed up. Like that's not afraid to just be brutal. Because I feel
Especially
like
with that
sometimes now,
ending.
yeah, especially because nowadays I feel like to an extent, like some horror movies are afraid to go to that certain extent. Like
See,
they're not willing to go that full, like let's just sometimes we just need a horror movie to just be like really just messed up and just
go all
yeah,
out.
exactly, for sure.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that it's just one of those things that I love what we're able to do in this world, but at the same time, like there was a lot of Smile 2 that I couldn't get into. I think it's hilarious that we already have a Smile 3 coming out. I think it's good for the genre. I think that it's gonna
Yeah.
do some amazing things, to build another trilogy like that. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
cautiously optimistic about what way they're gonna go. So, man, Joy, I've had an amazing time talking about all this stuff with you and hanging out with you for a little bit. But before I let you go, we always bounce back to the same question. We're going to go back over to Pumpkinhead, and what we're going to do is rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're not ranking this on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. We're not being critics. All we're doing is ranking this movie on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So, 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Joey, what would your ranking of Pumpkinhead be?
So for me, I would just have to say it's a 4.5 for me. Just like it is one of those movies that it is one of those things that right from the very beginning, from just like the cover art alone, just and then from starting the movie and then just going through and just all those multiple different scenes. Yeah. The only reason I would say that I wouldn't give it a perfect 5 out of 5 is I will say to an extent that it is slightly dated. Of like there not too much, but there are a few scenes to where like Pumpkinhead, the little stiff like looking like at from the view of not a 10-year-old. But overall, I still think holds up pretty well. Like, it's something that is still very effective that I still like to put on every now and then, just to kind of get back into that headspace.
And it's a great film to do that with.
Yeah.
And man, again, I just want to say thank you so much. I know I said at the beginning, guys, but we are at the end of the third act. The credits are about to roll and the curtain's about to drop. But before that happens, I have all of Joey's social media links in the description. So please make sure you're following, make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel as well. Joey, please don't go anywhere, my friend. I have a couple more questions for you. Um, Everyone else, if you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. It does help build the channel more than you know. And follow Sledgehammer Horror on social media. Those links are in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.